A Search in Secret India by Paul Brunton. Chapter 15. A Strange Encounter. I wander about Western India for the second time in a leisurely and indeterminate manner. Tired of traveling in dusty railway trains and seatless bullock carts, I take to an old but sturdy touring car, with a Hindu who plays the threefold part of companion, chauffeur, and servant. We move on through several changes of scenery while the miles speed away under our tires. In the forest areas, the chauffeur stops at nightfall, if unable to reach a village in time, and halts till dawn breaks. Throughout the night, he keeps a large fire burning, feeding it with twigs and bushes. He assures me that the flames will keep wild beasts from approaching us. Leopards and panthers haunt the forests, but such is the fear which a simple fire seems to inspire in them that they keep a respectful distance. Not so the jackals. Among the hills we hear their lugubrious barking quite close to us at times, and during the daytime we meet on occasions with vultures soaring out of their eyries into the brassy sky. Late one afternoon, while we are motoring along a road which is thickly covered with dust, we overtake a strange couple sitting by the wayside. One is a middle-aged holy man, crouching on his hams and apparently contemplating his navel under the thin shade of some scanty-leaved bushes. The other is a joyful attendant, probably a disciple. The older man's hands are joined, his eyes half shut in meditation, and he sits perfectly unmoved as we pass. We do not succeed in winning so much as a glance from him, although his youthful devotee stares in a dull way at our car. Something in the man's face attracts me and decides me to stop a little way off. My Hindu companion goes back to question them, and I watch him nervously approach the couple. At length he gets into a lengthy conversation with the young man. When he returns, he informs me, amongst a multitude of trivial details, that the couple are indeed master and disciple, and that the older man's name is Chandi Das, and that, according to the youngster's tribute, he is a yogi gifted with exceptional faculties. They are wandering from village to village and have already covered a great distance, partly on foot, partly on train, since they left their native Bengal nearly 2 years ago. I offer them a lift, which they immediately accept. The older man with benign grace, and the younger one with impulsive gratitude. And so, half an hour later, the car deposits a strangely mixed crew in the next village, where we resolve to spend the night. No other soul has been in sight on the route, except, when nearing the village, a boy tending a small herd of scraggy cows. The afternoon is drawing to its end as we stand beside the village well and drink some refreshing, though dubiously colored liquid. The 40 or 50 huts and cottages which make up the village's single straggling street with their unevenly thatched grass roofs, low, irregular mud walls, and rough bamboo uprights depress me a little with their squalid appearance. A few inhabitants squat in the shade before their unattractive dwellings. A gray, sad woman with half-hidden shriveled breasts approaches the well, stares at us, fills her brass pitcher with water, and sets out for home again. My Hindu companion collects the things for making tea and goes off in search of the village headman's house. The yogi and his faithful attendant disciple squat in the dust and rest. The former knows no English, and I have already discovered in the car that the latter possesses a smattering of the language, though hardly adequate to carry on a proper conversation. After a few attempts, I found it more profitable to wait until we could all settle down in the evening for an interview. I am determined to secure when I call on the services of my Hindu interpreter. Meanwhile, a little group of men and women and children has collected around us. These inhabitants of the interior seldom come into contact with Europeans. I have often found it an interesting experience to talk to some of them, if only for the unsophisticated and innocent point of view of life which such talks disclose. The children are shy at first, but I win them by distributing a few annas. They regard my alarm watch with incredulous wonder and naive delight as I set the dial and let the little peals ring forth for their benefit. A woman approaches the yogi, prostrates herself before him in the open street, touches his feet, and then puts her fingers to her own forehead. My Hindu servant returns with the headman and with the announcement that the tea is ready. He is a college graduate, but is quite content to act as the bearer, chauffeur, and interpreter, for he is seeking to fathom my Western experience and lives in the constant hope that one day I will take him to Europe. I treat him as a companion, and with that friendliness which I feel his good intelligence and character deserve. Meanwhile, someone has captured the yogi and his disciple and taken them off to a hut for hospitality. Certainly, these village folk are kindlier than their brethren of the towns. As we walk down to the headman's house, I watch the west reddening behind the distant hills as an orange sun flickers out its life. We halt at a superior-looking cottage, and inside I take the opportunity of thanking the headman. "The honor of your visit overwhelms me," he replies simply. We rest a while after the tea. The shadows of a brief twilight now lie across the fields, and I can hear the cattle being driven into the village for the night. Later, my servant goes out to visit the yogi and succeeds in preparing the way for me. He leads me to the door of one of the humbler huts. I enter the square, low-roofed room, and my feet tread an earthen floor. Hardly any furniture is to be seen, though a few clay pots lie around the rude hearth. A bamboo pole stuck into the wall acts as a kind of wardrobe for clothes and rags to hang upon it. The corner is graced with a brass water jug. I think how bare the place looks in the pale light of the primitive lamp. Such are the cheerless comforts of a poor peasant's home. The yogi's disciple greets me with his broken English, but his master is not visible. The latter has been called to the side of an ailing mother for his blessing. I wait for his return. At length, there is the sound outside in the street, and then a tall figure appears on the threshold. He enters the room gravely. Seeing me, he makes a gesture of acknowledgement and murmurs some words. My bearer whispers the translation. "Greetings, Sahib. May the gods protect you." He refuses my offer of a cotton blanket to squat on and drops to the floor where he crosses his legs. We confront each other, and I take the opportunity to study him more closely. The man before me is probably 50 years of age, though the short, rugged beard on his chin gives him an older appearance. His hair hangs down in tangled strands to his neck. His mouth is serious and always unsmiling. But what struck me the most when we first met strikes me anew at this moment. The strange glitter in his coal-black eyes, their lustrous brilliance. I know that such unearthly eyes will continue to haunt me for days. "You have traveled far?" he asks quietly. I nod assent. "What do you think of the Master Mahasaya?" he demands suddenly. I am startled. How has he come to know that I have been to his native Bengal and visited Mahasaya in Calcutta? I gaze at him for a while in bewilderment and then recall myself to his question. "He is the man who has won my heart," I reply. "But why do you ask?" He ignores my counter-question. There is an embarrassing silence. I try to keep up the conversation by saying, I am looking forward to seeing him again when I revisit Calcutta. Does he know you? Shall I carry your greetings? The yogi shakes his head firmly. You will never see Mahasaya again. Even now, Yama, the god of death, is calling to his spirit. Another pause. And then I tell him, I am interested in the lives and the thoughts of yogis. Will you not tell me how you came to be one and what wisdom you have gained? Shanti Das does not encourage my attempt to interview him. The past is but a heap of ashes, he answers. Do not ask me to poke my finger in the ashes and pick out dead experiences. I live neither in the past nor in the future. In the depths of human spirit, these things are no more real than shadows. That also is the wisdom I have learned. This is disconcerting. His stiff, hieratic attitude upsets my composure. But we who live in the world of time must take account of them. I object. Time, he queries. Are you sure there is such a thing? I fear that our talk is becoming fantastic. Does this man really possess the wonderful gifts which his disciple claims on his behalf? Aloud, I say, if time did not exist, then the past and the future would both be here now, but experience tells us to the contrary. So, what you mean is that your experience, the world's experience, tells you that. Surely you do not suggest that you have a different experience of the matter. There is truth in your talk, comes the strange answer. Am I to understand that the future shows itself to you? I live in the eternal, replies Chandidas. I never seek to discover the events that coming years will pass over my head. But you can for others. If I wish, yes. I am determined to get the thing clear in my mind. Then can you give them an understanding of events which are not yet to happen? No, which are yet to happen? Only in part. The lives of men do not move so smoothly that every detail is ordained for them. Then will you reveal that part of my future which you can discover? Wherefore do you seek to know these things? I hesitate. God has not dropped a veil over what is to come without fit cause, continues the other man, almost sternly. What can I say? And then an inspiration comes. Grave problems vex my mind. In the hope of finding some light upon them, I have come to your land. Perhaps in what you can tell me there may be guidance for my feet, or perhaps I shall know whether I have come on a fruitless errand. The yogi turns his shining black eyes upon me. The silence which ensues, I am impressed once more by the grave dignity of this man. He seems so profound, so pontifically wise as he sits there with folded legs and interlocked feet, as to transcend his mean surroundings in this poor hut of a remote jungle village. I notice for the first time a lizard is watching us from the upper part of a wall. Its bead-like eyes never leave us, and its grotesquely wide mouth is so fantastic that I almost believe it's grinning wickedly at me. At last, Chandidas finds his voice. I am not adorned with the polished jewels of learning, but if you will listen to what I have to say, then your journey will not be fruitless. Go back to the same place where you started your Indian journey, and before a new moon will have arisen, you shall have your desire satisfied. Do you mean that I should return to Bombay? You speak rightly. I am puzzled, but what can that hybrid half-Western city hold for me? But I have never found anything there to help me on my quest, I protest. Chandidas looks at me coolly. There is your path. Follow it as quickly as your heels can carry you. Lose no time, but hasten back to Bombay tomorrow. Is that all you can tell me? There is more, but I have not troubled to perceive it. He reverts to silence. His eyes become as expressionless as still water. A while later he speaks. You will leave India and return to the western lands before the next equinox. A grievous illness will fall upon your body almost as soon as you leave our soil. The spirit will struggle in the racked body, but not yet is its hour of escape. And then the hidden work of destiny will come to light, for it will send you back to Aryavarta, India, so that in all you visit as thrice. A sage awaits you even now, and for his sake, since you are tied to him by ancient threads, you will come back to dwell amongst us. His voice stops, and a faint tremor passes across his eyelids. When later he looks directly at me, he adds, You have heard. There is nothing more to say. The rest of our talk is desultory and unimportant. Chandidas refuses to enter into any further discussion about himself, so that I am left wondering how to receive his strange words, although I feel that there is more behind them. There is There is an amusing moment when, in the course of a brief conversation with his youthful disciple, the latter asks me earnestly, Do you not see such things among the yogis of England? I try to restrain a smile. There are no yogis in that country, I answer. Everyone else has sat still and silent throughout the evening, but when the yogi signifies that the interview is over, the owner of the hut, a peasant probably, approaches us and asks if we will share his humble meal with him. I tell him that we have brought some food in the car and that we will go over to the headsman's house to cook it, since the headman had promised to accommodate us in a room in his house for the night. But the peasant replies that he will not have it said that he has forgotten how to be hospitable. I tell him that I have eaten well today and beg him not to trouble. However, he is firm and insistent, so rather than disappoint him, I accept. It ill becomes me to receive a guest and give him no food, he remarks, and then he offers me a dish of fried grain. I look through the barred hole which serves as a window. The opal crescent of the moon thrusts a pale light through the hole as I reflect upon the superior character and kindliness which one finds so often in these simple, illiterate peasants. No college education, no business acumen can compensate for the degeneration of character which so often marks the folk of towns. And when I have taken farewell of Chandidas and his disciple, the peasant lifts the cheap lantern which hangs from a narrow beam in the roof and accompanies us to the street. I reassure him, so he touches his forehead, smiles, and stands in the open doorway. I follow in the wake of my servant, each of us flashing a torch toward the place of our rest for the night. Sleep eludes me, for mingling with my thoughts of the mysterious yogi from Bengal are the eerie cries of the jackals and the peculiar long howl of a pariah dog. A Search in Secret India by Paul Brunton. If I do not follow the counsel of Chandidas to the strict letter, at least I turn the car's radiator towards Bombay and make a gradual return to that city. When I succeed in arriving there and installing myself in a hotel, I succeed also in falling ill. Cooped up between four walls, tired in mind and sick in body, I begin to develop for the first time a pessimistic outlook. I begin to feel as if I had had enough of India. I have covered many thousands of miles of travel in this country, and occasionally under dismal conditions. The India I have been seeking is not to be found in the European quarters, where whining, dining, dancing, bridge, and whiskey and sodas make up the pattern of an attractive picture. Sojourn in the Indian quarters of towns, whenever decently possible, has helped me in my quest, but has not improved my health, while sojourn in up-country districts and jungle villages with unsuitable food and bad water, unsettled life, and tropical sleeplessness has proved itself dangerous. My body is now a weary burden flung on a bed of pain. I wonder how much longer I can stave off a breakdown. I have grown heavy-eyed with lack of sleep. For months I've been unable to exercise this wrath of insomnia which has relentlessly pursued me throughout the land, and the need to walk warily between the strange types of men with whom I have come into contact has played sad havoc with my nerves. The necessity of keeping a careful inner balance, of being critical and yet receptive at the same time, while penetrating the unfamiliar circles of India's secret hinterland, has imposed a prolonged strain upon me. I have had to learn how to pick my way between genuine sages and fools who mistake their egotistic fancies for divine knowledge, between true religious mystics and mere mystery mongers, between pseudo-holy men working black magic and true followers of the way of yoga. And I have had to cram and concentrate my investigations into minimal time, for I cannot afford to spend years out of a life upon a single quest. If my physical and mental condition is bad, my spiritual state is little better. I am disheartened by a sense of failure. True, I have met some men of remarkable attainments and fine character, as well as others who can do amazing things, but I have not settled down to any positive inward recognition that there is the spiritual Superman of my quest, the master who appeals to my rationalistic makeup and to whom I can gladly attach myself. Enthusiastic disciples have vainly endeavored to draw me into their own teacher's folds, but I can see that just as youth takes this first adolescent adventure as the last measure of love, so these good folk have been so thrilled by their early experiences that they have not thought to seek any further. Besides, I have no desire to become a depositary of another man's doctrines. It is a living, first-hand, personal experience which I seek, a spiritual illumination, entirely my own and not someone else's. But after all, I'm only a humble and irresponsible scribe, wandering in the East after abandoning his ambitions. Who am I to expect to be favored with such a meeting? And so depression throws its heavy mantle around my heart. Well, when I am well enough to drag my body around, I sit at the hotel table with an army captain as my neighbor. He unfolds a long story of a sick wife, a slow recovery, canceled leave arrangements, and so on. He makes my own morbidity worse. When we have finished and are out on the veranda, he sticks a long cigar in his mouth and mutters, "Some game, life, eh?" "Yes, some," I agree laconically. Half an hour later, I'm in a taxi speeding along Hornby Road. We stop outside the tall, piazza-like facade of a shipping company's offices. I pay for my ticket with the consciousness that I have done the only possible thing in taking this sudden exit from India. Despising the grimy shovels hovels. Despising the grimy hovels, dusty shops, ornate palaces, efficient-looking office blocks, which are Bombay, I return to my hotel room in order to continue my unhappy ruminations. Evening comes. The waiter sets a delicious curry on the table, but the dinner repels me. I take a couple of iced drinks and then taxi across the city. I get out and saunter slowly along a street until I find myself standing in front of one of the West's gifts to urban India, a great, gaudy-faced cinema theater. I pause a while before its brightly lit entrance and study its flaringly colored posters. Always fond of movies, they seem to offer tonight a welcome drink of the cup of lethe. I do not imagine that I shall ever be completely forlorn while I can buy for a rupee or its equivalent a padded and plush-covered seat at a cinema in any city throughout the world. Inside, I settle down to watch the inevitable fragments of American life turned into tabloids and flung in shadows upon a white screen. Once again there appears a foolish wife and faithless husband, both moving on a background of palatial apartments. I try hard to fix my attention on them, but somehow I find myself becoming increasingly bored. To my surprise, I discover the old zest for cinema has suddenly deserted me. The tales of human passion, tragedy, and comedy have strangely lost their power to sadden my heart and to move me to laughter. Halfway through the show, the screen figures flicker away into sheer unreality. My attention becomes quite abstracted, and my thoughts fasten themselves once again upon my strange quest. I realize unexpectedly that I had become a pilgrim without a God, wanderer from city to city, from village to village, seeking a place where the mind may rest, but finding none. How have I gazed into the faces of many men, hoping to find the exotic lineaments of a spiritual Superman who has cast the plumb line of thought deeper than the men of my own land and time. How have I looked into the dark flashing eyes of other peoples, hoping to find a pair that will echo back the mysterious answer which will satisfy me. And then a peculiar tenseness arises in my brain, and the atmosphere around me seems to be charged with potent electrical vibrations. I am aware that some profoundly dynamic psychic change is occurring within me. Suddenly, a mental voice thrusts itself into the field of attention and forces me to listen, amazed as it scornfully says to me, "Life itself is nothing more than a cinema play, unrolling its episodes from cradle to grave. Where now are the past scenes? Can you hold them? Where are those yet to come? Can you grasp them? Instead of trying to find the real, the enduring, the eternal, you come here and waste time on what is even more deceptive than ordinary existence, a wholly imaginary story, an illusion within the great illusion." Thereupon, I lose the last shred of evidence in the spinning film of human love and tragedy. To retain my seat any longer will be a farce. I rise and walk out of the theater. I wander slowly and aimlessly through the street under the brilliant moon, which in the east seems so close to man's life. At the corner, a beggar approaches me, and I gaze into his face as he utters his first unrecognizable sound. I recoil in horror, for he is disfigured by a terrible disease, which has left the skin of his face clinging in patches to the bone. But a profound pity for this fellow victim of life replaces my first disgust, and I thrust all my loose change into his outstretched hand. I make my way back to the seashore, to a lonelier part, where one can remain untroubled by the motley crowds of varied races which throng the Back Bay promenade each night. Gazing at the stars which form a beautiful canopy to this city, I realize that I have reached an unexpected crisis. A Search in Secret India, Chapter 15, by Paul Brunton. Within a few days, my ship will head its way to Europe and slide through the greenish-blue waters of the Arabian Sea. Once on board, I shall bid farewell to philosophy and toss my oriental quest into the waters of oblivion. No longer shall I give all that I have to offer, time, thought, energy, money, upon the altar of a search for masters. But the inescapable mental voice persists in troubling me again. Fool, it flings scornfully at me. So this is to be the empty result of years of investigation and aspiration? You are to tread the same road as other men? To forget all that you've learned? To drown your better feelings in hard egotism and sensuality? But take care, your apprenticeship to life has been served with terrible masters. Unending thought has stripped the veneer off existence. Ceaseless activity has lashed you with its whip, and spiritual loneliness has segregated your soul. Think you that you can escape the results of such an indenture? Not so, for it has put invisible chains on your feet. I seesaw from one mood to another, the while I stare at the thick star clusters which overpower the oriental sky. I seek to defend myself against the merciless psychic voice, pleading my helplessness in the face of failure. The voice answers, "Are you sure none of the men you met here in India can be the master you seek?" A long gallery of faces passes before my mind's eye. Quick-tempered northern faces, placid southern ones, nervous, emotional eastern faces, and strong, silent Marathi faces from the west. Friendly faces, foolish faces, wise faces, dangerous faces, evil faces, and inscrutable ones. A single face disentangles itself from the procession and persistently hovers before me, its eyes quietly gazing into mine. It is the calm, sphinx-like countenance of the Maharishi, the sage who has spent his life on the hill of the holy beacon in the south. I have never forgotten him. Indeed, a tender thought of the Maharishi has risen for a brief life again and again. But the abrupt character of my experiences, the whirling panorama of faces and events, and the sudden changes which came during my quest have deeply overlaid the impressions of my short period with him. Yet I realize now that he has passed through my life like a star, which moves across the dark void with its lonely light, and then it's gone. And I have to admit, in answer to my inner questioner, that he is the one man who has impressed me more than any other person I've ever met, either in the East or in the West. But he had seemed so aloof, so remote from a European mentality, and so indifferent whether I became his pupil or not. The silent voice now grips me with intensity. How can you be sure that he was indifferent? You did not stay long, but hurried away. Yes, I confess feebly, I had to carry out my self-imposed program. What else could I do? There is one thing you can do now. Go back to him. How can I force myself upon him? Your personal feelings are of less importance than success in this search. Go back to the Maharishi. He is at the other end of India, and I am too ill to start my wanderings again. What does that matter? If you want a master, you must pay the price. I doubt whether I want one now, for I feel so tired. Too tired to want anything. Anyway, I've booked a steamer berth and must sail in 3 days. It's too late to alter things. The voice almost sneers at me. Too late, eh? What has happened to your sense of values? You admit that the Maharishi is the most wonderful man you ever met, but you are quite willing to run away from him before you've hardly tried to know him. Return to him. I remain sullen and obstinate. The brain answers, yes, but the blood says, no. Once more the voice urges me, change your plans again. You must go back to the Maharishi. Thereupon something surges up from the inner depths of my being and demands immediate assent to the command of that inexplicable voice. It overwhelms me, and so forcibly does it master my reason-born objections and the protests of my enfeebled body, that I become as a babe in hands. Through all this sudden, overpowering urgency, which asks my constant return to the Maharishi, I see his summoning irresistible eyes in a most vivid manner. I cease all further argument with the inner voice, because I know that I am now helpless in its hands. I shall travel at once to the Maharishi, and if he accepts me, entrust myself to his tutelage. I shall hitch my wagon to his shining star. The die is cast. Something has conquered me, though I do not understand what it is. I return to the hotel, mop my brow, and sip a cup of lukewarm tea. As I drink it, I realize that I am a changed man. I am conscious that my dark burden of wretchedness and doubt is falling from my shoulders. Next morning, I come down to breakfast, aware that I am smiling for the first time since I came back to Bombay. The tall, bearded Sikh servant, resplendent in his white jacket, golden cummerbund, and white trousers, smiles back in response as he stands with folded arms behind my chair. And then he says, "A letter for you, sir." I look at the cover. It has been twice readdressed and has followed me from place to place. As I take my seat, I slit it open. To my delight and surprise, I discover it has been written in the hermitage at the foot of the hill of the Holy Beacon. Its writer, once a prominent public man and member of the Madras Legislative Council, has withdrawn from worldly affairs following a tragic domestic bereavement and become a disciple of the Maharishi, whom he visits on occasions. I had met him, and we were engaged in a desultory correspondence. The letter is full of encouraging thoughts and suggests that I shall be welcome if I care to revisit the hermitage. When I finish reading it, one sentence flames out in memory so as to obliterate the others. "You have had the good fortune to meet a real master," it runs. I treat the letter as an omen favorable to my newborn decision to return to the Maharishi. A ride down to the shipping offices follows breakfast, and I leave the intimation that I am not sailing. It is not long before I bid adieu to Bombay and carry out my new plan. I cross hundreds of miles of flat, colorless Deccan tableland with long stretches where solitary bamboo trees alone rear their leafy heads to vary the scene. The train cannot roll through the scanty grass and occasional trees of this Indian prairie fast enough for me. As it flies joltingly along the rails, I feel that I am speeding towards a great occasion, spiritual enlightenment, and the most mysterious personality I have ever encountered. For as I look out of the screened compartment window, my slumbering hopes of rediscovering a rishi, a spiritual superman, awaken once more. When, on the second day, we have covered over 1,000 miles and have begun to enter the placid southern landscape, broken by a few red hills, I feel strangely happy. And when we leave the torrid plains behind, I find the dank, steamy heat of Madras city positively welcome, for it means that I have broken the back of my journey. After leaving the South Maratha Company's terminus, I have to cross the scattered town in order to change to the South Indian Railway. Finding that I have a few hours to spare before the train starts, I use the time to make some necessary purchases and to have a hurried chat with an Indian author who introduced me to His Holiness Sri Shankara, the spiritual head of South India. He greets me warmly, and when I inform him that I am on my way to the Maharishi, the writer exclaims, "I am not surprised. That is what I expected." I am taken aback, but I ask him, "Why do you say that?" He smiles. "My friend, do you not remember how we parted from His Holiness in the town of Chingleput? Did you not notice that he whispered something to me in the anteroom just before we left?" "Yes. Now that you remind me, I certainly do remember it." The author's thin, refined face still keeps its smile. "This is what His Holiness told me. Your friend will travel all around India. He will visit many yogis and listen to many teachers, but in the end, he will have to return to the Maharishi, for the Maharishi alone is the right master." These words, coming as they do on the eve of my return, deeply impress me. They reveal the prophetic power of Sri Shankara. More, they offer a kind of confirmation that I am taking the right course. How strange are the wanderings which my stars have imposed upon me.